Hello and welcome to the John Ark Show. On today's episode, we interview actor Bill Duke from movies like Predator, Commando, American Gigolo, No Man's Land, Bird on a Wire, Menace to Society, Exit Wounds, Payback with Mel Gibson, XMen, The Last Stand, and his latest movie, which just came out called No Sudden Moves. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel for free. You can also like, comment, and follow us. We're going to have a lot of great celebrity interviews coming up, so make sure to click on that notification bell so you can be notified every time we upload a new episode. I'd also like to tell you about a service called HollywoodIsCalling.com. It's a great service that allows you to purchase live phone calls from more than 100 celebrities for just $19.95. So give it a try. HollywoodIsCalling.com. Now, let's say hello to Bill Duke. Hello, Bill, and welcome to the John Ark Show. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm blessed, and thank you for having me.
Well, we're really pleased to have you on it. This is going to be great. We're big fans of yours.
Thank you.
Bill, at some point in their lives, many people have tried becoming actors, but you actually made it on a world-class level. How did you get your first acting job in a theatrical motion picture?
Well, the first major role for me was in a film called Car Wash.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a friend of the director, Michael Schultz, and he and Ivan Dixon starred in the movie. And they asked me to come in and read. I did. And the next week, they gave me the part. But I knew Michael from New York because he's with the Negro Ensemble Company, and so I knew him. We were friends.
Nice, nice. Who were some of the great actors of your past that inspired you to want to become an actor?
Wow. Sidney Poitier.
Nice.
James Earl Jones. Cicely Tyson. They were Meryl Streep. When I saw Meryl Streep in Sophie's Choice, and when she was at the train station, and that they said only two people can come on the train, and so she offered her children, and they said no, an adult and a child. That moment, do you remember that moment?
Yes, I do. It was a big deal.
Was that an incredible? Anyway, but it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, very, very interesting. You know, you mentioned Sidney Poitier and James Earl Jones. Later on, we're going to talk about the role that dignity plays in an individual's character. And both those actors are the very definition of dignity, on-screen dignity, off-screen dignity, in the way they conduct yourselves. And I see how some of that has passed on to you in the way you sort of portray your characters on screen.
Thank you.
So I used to be a producer for Oprah. And the first time I met her in the studio, what really stunned me was how modest and humble she was. Now,
Yes.
She appeared to have no ego, no arrogance. And of course, I'd never met a billionaire prior to that. And of course, I somehow, unconsciously assumed that all billionaires would be very egotistical. And that was not the case in her situation. Some people say that egos kill more Hollywood careers than drugs and alcohol do. What are your thoughts on that sort of thing, on ego spilling out of control?
Well, Wayne Dyer, who I like a lot, he's a motivational speaker on YouTube. He says every day you wake up, we have two options. We can be a host to God or a hostage to our ego. And he defines ego, E-G-O, as edging God out. And many times in our industry, fame kind of, how can I say, takes us down the wrong path because we really believe that what we represent in terms of our recognition as artists is the foundation of everything. And sometimes, with so much press and so much employment and attention to you, your ego can transcend everything else. But what's amazing about this business it puts you back in your box pretty quickly when you forget, because it's a roller coaster ride, you know? Even the biggest of actors have noticed, the very few who stay on the top, you know, their entire lifetime. But for most of us, it's like great movie, great reviews, da 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 da. But, you know, it's about the next thing. And if the next thing is not as great as the last thing, you have a problem. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We've gone back and reviewed some of the characters that you portrayed in various movies, and you almost always portray them with a level of calm, dignity, and strength that causes you to captivate the audience by saying less instead of more. Where does that come from? Does that come from your upbringing or your background in meditation, or are you by nature a person who is sort of a calm minimalist in life, in real life?
I think it's a combination of all those things, but also I studied music. And one of the most important things about music that people really don't understand are the rests. Because without rest between notes, there is no music, right?
That makes a lot of sense. And I see that in the way you convey dialogue in your movies. You say less, and there are appropriate pauses where you lock into their eyes and you hypnotize the person you're talking to. And that always makes what you say more impactful than what the other person on screen is saying. It's a great effect. We'll talk about some of that later, too. You know who else does that is Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood always says less.
Yes.
And it really has an impact. There's huge power in these silent gaps.
He's brilliant. He's brilliant. He's brilliant.
Yeah. Big fan. So you were in, how's this for a segue? You were in American Gigolo with Richard Gere. And what was it like to work on that movie? And do you think that movie could even get made today?
Good question. Yes, I think it could get made today. Paul is a great, great director. And Richard Gere to work with. People don't understand, you know, Richard Gere, you know, when he came to the set, he was, I say, prepared. It's like he came in as the character almost, you know? And it's like he is a constant, like he gives not 100, but 1,000%. If you're on screen with Richard Gere, you don't bring 1,000%, you get wiped off. So you have to really be there and in that space with him and live that reality for that moment. So it was a great, great, great opportunity. It was a team effort too, some good people.
Now, I believe your first movie that you appeared in with Arnold Schwarzenegger was Commando, which of course was a massive hit. I met Arnold back in the day when he was with Maria Shriver, and I was impressed by how focused and determined he was. How did you and Arnold get along, and what was it like to work on Commando?
Working on Commando was an honor, working with those great actors and working with Arnold. And Arnold and I became friends. We used to go out to have food together.
You did what?
Go out and had food together.
Oh, yeah.
There's a restaurant he goes to in the Palisades, and he invited me to eat with him. Maria and my lady went with me also. And so we really became well acquainted. So when it came to Predator, he and I had known each other, you know? And so the thing is that, and there's another person that is, when we did Predator, it's a true story. Arnold rented out the ballrooms at the hotel we were staying in and had shipped to those ballroom gyms. I mean, state-of-the-art gym equipment. If we had a 7 a.m. or 7:30 call, every morning at 4 o'clock around, Arnold, Jesse, and the other guys, and me the first week, would get up and run from 4 to 5, at least in the morning, okay? Then we come back and have breakfast. No, that's not true. Work out in the gym for another 45 minutes, then have breakfast. And then drive 45 minutes to the set. I did that for a week, and that was it. Mm-hmm. And they called me a wimp and everything. I didn't care. I mean, the thing is that they were committed And it was a great experience because we became brothers in that film. You know?
Nice. And by the way, that was Predator was filmed down in Mexico somewhere.
Yeah, Puerto Vallarta. Then we went to Palenque down near the Guatemalan border.
So he shipped that gym equipment all the way from California down to Mexico.
Yes, in trucks.
Yeah, that's serious dedication.
Yes, it is.
So now a lot of people, including myself, think that Predator was one of the greatest action movies ever made. And no matter how many sequels they make, they're never as good as the original Predator.
Mm-hmm.
Where did most of that movie's magic come from? Was it the director, the acting, the script, or was it just some rare form of spontaneous synchronicity that just touched the whole project?
I think it's all of the above, but the most important part, I think, was the brotherhood that we were forced into. The first week that we were there, they put netting around the food station where we ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And every time we got the food, there were bugs in the food. And so we would tell the caterer, take this junk back because there's bugs in it. And he said, folks, we're in the jungle. There's netting around everything, but we're in the jungle. And I'm doing the best I can. By the second week, the bugs were called protein.
Now I understand that the shooting schedule in the jungle was horrific because of the temperature. And I also heard that the Predator costume, the first version of the Predator costume, looked like a Halloween costume from Walmart. So they had to stop and redesign it. Do you have any other greats? By the way, something else I have to tell you. Everybody I know in New York, on Wall Street, in Washington, D.C., in London, in Silicon Valley, everybody is a huge fan of Predator. So there's something really special about that movie and all the people who worked in it. So just, kudos to you. But do you have any other stories that you can tell us about some of the shooting of some of the scenes?
So the first Predator was not the one you saw on screen, right?
Right.
Because the first Predator was had to fly through the jungle in 100 and some degree temperature with this felt suit on because they were going to superimpose the special effects in post-production. And he had these wires in the trees. He had to go through the wires and fly. He had these, and so he had passed out for the second time because he was dehydrated. So the producer came over the second night and said, listen, you pass out again and I'm firing you. And the actor said, I'm not passing out on purpose. I'm dehydrated. Producer said, I understand that, but you're costing me time and money. 2 weeks went by. The actor passed out again. Producer came over to him and said, you're fired. That was Jean-Claude Van Damme. The first movie he had.
That's interesting because whenever you hear that story, they make it sound like it was Van Damme's fault, but I see that it really wasn't.
No, it was the weather.
Yeah.
It was over 100 degrees. And he's got this big suit on and flying through trees in the sun. It was not his fault.
That's never underestimate the ability of Hollywood to blame somebody else for something that's not their fault.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, so in Predator, you had what many consider to be the greatest action scene in any movie ever. And that is when you fired the minigun into the jungle to kill the Predator. Now you guys fired, or I should say you fired that minigun for what seemed like an eternity. And it looked like you killed every leaf and mosquito in the jungle. But the Predator escaped. How long did it take to film that scene? And what was it like to fire the minigun?
Firing the minigun was, oh man. It was powerful because that thing is heavy, but it has power, And the thing that was most impressive about that, the special effects guys, you saw all the trees and the bushes and the things that, went down from the gun. Mm. They took days. They used to cut the tree or the branches in half, put an explosive pellet in between the two cuts, glue them back together. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of bushes, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I fired the gun, they had this panel that they ran these things across and the pellets exploded. So it looked like, the gun was exploding them.
Mhm.
The special effects guys are the ones who built that entire jungle. It was amazing.
Fascinating. So we measured the scene, and it's almost 60 seconds long of nonstop shooting. How
Right.
long and how many takes did it require to film that?
I don't remember the exact, I think it was at least 4 or 5 takes because, we were in the jungle and I think there were 2 cameras that they had, but they had to film Arnold and myself and the other actors and their reaction to the predator and then reverse and do all the trees exploding and everything and the branches. So it took a while, but we had a great crew, great cast, great staff. But being in the jungle of Puerto Vallarta, and sometimes over 100 degrees, and up in the mountains,
Mhm.
was really challenging.
So just for the fun of it, we watched some of the scenes where you and Arnold are on the screen together, and we watch his acting style, who it was, of course, the star of the movie at the time, and your acting style. And I don't know if it's a matter of who had more acting training or what, or if it was simply an innate ability, but almost every time you capture the audience's attention more with the look in your eyes or the way you convey your dialogue than Arnold does.
Mm.
And were you conscious of that? Was that a deliberate effort on your part? Is that the way you always are? Because you're really good at locking eyes with either the camera or the person you're talking to on the screen. And that's it. They're going to watch. Arnold is good because he's the star. He's very physical and very athletic. But Arnold was not capturing the camera or the audience the way you do. And you do this in all your movies. I don't know if it's something about the eyes or something about the way you lock in your stare, but there's something that you do that is very, very impactful. And were you aware of that? Did you sense that I'm doing a better acting job than Arnold? Or what was going on at that instant?
No. I was just doing my job and being part of the scene, but that's what I do with all my characters.
Mhm.
It's like when I teach acting, I tell my students, you memorize your lines, you talk to the director and, you get what they want from you. And then you have to fall into darkness backward, which means you depend upon something within yourself. It's almost not explainable. It's like something you trust in that's in you. So you're not just acting, you become the person. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so there's a craft to that.
How far into your career was it, or perhaps into your acting studies, your acting classes, before you realized how to do that? Or was that always innate and within you?
I learned it from going to Boston University under Lloyd Richards and then at NYU School of the Arts. Those 2 schools were profound in terms of teaching acting technique. And they made you erase the word acting. They said, no, you're being, you're becoming. How do you be and become? And then they taught you have to trust something in yourself that you cannot name necessarily, but that's where your talent lies. And practicing that over and over again is something I had to learn, because when you start as an actor, you want to make sure you got your lines right and that you're saying things in a certain way, and that you're it's almost like posing. But when you really get into acting, you're not quite sure how it's going to turn out if you become the person, and how it turns out is based upon what the other person's doing in the scene. You in that silence and listening. Like I said before, it's like in music, there is no music without the rests. If you go from one note to the other without a rest, it's just like a blur. But what is that silence and what does it hold? That's the main thing.
It's a very powerful effect. And you know who that technique is also used by great political orators. speech givers.
Yes.
The pauses for effect, very, very impactful. I know it sounds crazy, but if you go back and you watch even somebody as nuts as Hitler, and I don't speak German, I have no idea what he's saying, but I can see by the cadence of his speech, by the emphasis on the gaps and the silences, I can see him hypnotizing all the people in the audience. That it's a very, very profound effect. There's something about it.
Yes, very, very true. Silence is powerful.
It is powerful. Have you ever unnerved any of the people that you were acting with and sort of knocked them off their game by using that silence and that stare into their eyes? Has that ever tripped people up that you were working with?
Not really, no. I've been forced to work with great actors that bring the same kind of craft that I do, and I've learned from them and I've gotten a lot from them, I was in a Broadway show called Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death by Mel Gibson years ago. And there are actors you've never heard the name of, but when I wasn't on stage, I was to stand in the wings and look at their performance. They were some of the greatest actors I've ever known. I learned from them by just watching. And they never became famous, but I learned from them and I appreciate them every day.
Did you ever see Moneyball with Brad Pitt and Philip Seymour Hoffman?
Philip Seymour Hoffman is one of my favorite actors ever.
Yeah. In that movie, he goes back and forth with Brad Pitt. They have these contentious arguments. But Philip, the way he does in that movie and he does in some of his other roles, he always uses less rather than more when he responds to Brad Pitt. Yes. And it's very, very, it captures the audience's attention. There's just something there. So whether you're a salesperson or a speech giver, a public speaker, I think people should really look into this because it's a gold mine. I think it is. So you've been in a lot of great movies. How did most of these movies come to you? Did you have a great agent who was locating these projects for you, or did you go out and pursue these opportunities on your own? How did most of the great roles come to you?
Most of them were through agents that introduced me to, the producer, the writer, and the director. Some of them, like Car Wash, I knew the producers and the director myself. So it was a mix of both. But for the most part, it's not easy to find great agents, but when you find one who leverages your career into other opportunities, that's a blessing.
You directed a great movie that was really ahead of its time called Deep Cover, starring Lawrence Fishburne. And it was about the rise of synthetic drugs, which of course is a really serious problem now with fentanyl. You and Lawrence both have similar acting styles. You're very cool, very calm, very menacing, very, very focused. Was this movie already great on the pages of the script, or did you as a director have to put a lot of work into it to make it that good?
I worked on it with the writers and the producer, but when they gave me the script, it was already a great script. I just wanted to refine it. I just wanted to, shine this and that, but the foundation was already there. But working with Lawrence and working with Jeff Goldblum, those two guys together, they bring a synergy. They found something together. You know what I'm saying? And,
yeah.
One of the great moments in the movie for me is when Jeff kills Clarence Williams III and Lawrence Fishburne's response to it. And we didn't tell him to do that. But when he starts sobbing and saying, you never should have done that. You never should have killed him. And he's weeping. That was an amazing moment.
By the way, didn't he just pass away last year, or was it?
Yes.
Yeah. Talk about another man. He was on the original Mod Squad, I think.
Yes.
He played Link. And Link was famous for always saying less rather than more. And he would capture people's attention.
That's right.
And you know who else did that? Edward James Olmos on the original Miami Vice.
Yes.
In fact, he would piss off some of the other actors on the screen because he wouldn't make eye contact. So
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, very, very effective technique. So you and Mel Gibson did a movie that I just love called Payback, which was amazing. The writing and the acting were just fantastic. Tell me what it was like to work on that movie, and how did you and Mel get along?
Me and Mel got along very, very well. Mel, and I know he's been through a lot, but one of the most humble, kind people I've ever met on the set. He always was prepared. And as an actor, he was supportive of all the other actors. If you had to do 3 takes, he didn't care. He was there to support you. And so working with him on that movie was great.
Now, in the past, you've talked about how cyclical an actor's income can be. Sometimes it's up and sometimes it drops dramatically.
Roller coaster.
Yeah, absolutely. High speed roller coaster sometimes.
That's true.
What do you think that most people who get into acting should know about that issue? And how can they prepare for the time in between jobs when things are slow, like this past year during the pandemic, which really slowed down a lot of the industry?
It's called show business. And most people come in the business with compassion and with passion and enthusiasm, but have no understanding of the business. And it's important to understand the business of it, because for 90% of folks, it's not consistent. And, you know, if people should really study, should go to SAG and just check out what percentage of the actors in the Screen Actors Guild even work annually, and how many of them make over $10,000 a year. I'm just saying that if you look at the facts of things, but preparing for those downtimes is very, very, very important. Also, these days, really being multifaceted. In other words, yes, you're a great actor, but there are other opportunities of producing, directing, writing. So when those downtimes come, you have other options. And so what I suggest to people is, you're a great actor. How do you leverage that? How do you leverage your brand to other opportunities? That's what I encourage people to do.
Yeah, I'll tell you something interesting. It's not just people who are beginning their acting careers. I know a number of female stars who were on hit TV shows for a number of years, recognizable names and faces. And then when the shows were canceled, the money stopped coming in. A number of these women went to work for escort agencies, but not in the US. They would be flown overseas to the Middle East and elsewhere simply because they refused to get a conventional job. They'd much rather go and make 50 or 100 grand for the weekend in Brunei or the Middle East. And that, you know, that's a very, very interesting psychology, but it's much more common than people would realize. It's very difficult for some people to accept those slow times, you know?
You know, and for women, it's worse. You know, this is like 15 years ago now. I had a friend over at a studio who was an executive and who could put actors in place, right? And so I had a friend of mine who's a New York stage actress, got awards and everything. And so I said to him, she's coming to Hollywood. I want you to see her because she's very talented. And so, okay, he said, okay. She came, went to his office, and weeks passed, and she never heard from him. So I called her one day and said, hey man, can we have lunch? I'd like to talk to you about what happened. He said, okay. So we got having lunch, and I said, well, what happened, man? You said that you were going to look out for her. And he said, look, man, she's a great actress. She's a beautiful spirit, but she's 41. So what's that got to do with it? He said, okay. He said, Bill, it's a very different industry for men and women. He said, for women, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, 14, 15, 16, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. I said, what are you talking? He said, Bill, you see films with men in their 60s having love interests in their 20s and 30s. He said, name one woman in her 60s or 70s who has a husband or boyfriend in his 20s or 30s. He said, it's a totally different world. And guess what? It's true.
Yeah. And if you go overseas, the chasm between the age groups on film is even worse. If you go to France, if you go to the Middle East, a lot of these countries, it's really common for a 70-year-old guy to be, on screen with a 25-year-old.
Yes.
So, so you
Crazy.
did, what's that? Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So you did another movie called Exit Wounds with Steven Seagal and DMX. What was Steven Seagal like to work with in the film?
Steven is great, man. Steven is funny, great sense of humor, and a hard worker. I'm talking about when it comes to stunts, he goes through it over and over again. When it comes to scenes, he's a perfectionist. Even if the director says it was great, can I do it again? He's that kind of, he takes his work seriously, really. It was great working with him.
I think part of that is the martial arts ethic.
You're totally right. You're totally right.
The philosophy,
You're totally right about that. Yes.
And I tell you, the industry is really famous for mistreating people when they no longer serve their financial agenda. I don't know why that is. It's very, very cannibalistic for some strange reason. And, I met his ex-wife, Kelly LeBrock, really nice woman. And whenever I see Steven's always conducting himself in a very respectful manner, a very professional manner. For some reason, there are some entities out there which don't want that to be the perception of Steven Seagal. It's very, and I always wonder, what is your agenda? Because they try to dismantle the guy, disparage the guy, and I really don't see why. I see no evidence, or I see no reason to treat him that way in some of these YouTube videos. It's very, very bizarre, but the whole world is bizarre as far as I'm concerned. So DMX passed away recently. Did you get to know him well, and what was it like working with him on the movie?
I didn't get to know him well, but he was a brilliant young man in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, the drugs got to him. But, to work with him, it was like, the rapper that you saw, that he postured being was not the person he really was. He was a young man who was learning the industry in terms of acting, etc. And he knew that. And so he was open to suggestions and criticism, whatever it was, but he was open to that.
It's very smart, very smart.
Oh yeah. He was brilliant. He really, really was. If you listen to some of the lyrics in his songs, he was a great writer too.
Yeah. There's a lot of ego in the music business, and to humble yourself and admit that you don't know the movie business and to be open to the mentorship of other people, very smart.
Yes, I agree.
So you did a movie called XMen: The Last Stand, and that movie had a $210 million budget. Tell us about the differences between working on a $210 million movie versus working on a smaller budgeted movie. Were they dramatic as people would think?
Look, when you got a movie that's big, there's no end to the number of takes that you can get from the director-wise. You're working on a smaller budget movie, every single, not forget minutes, every second, they're counting how much money you're spending. It's not like you can do 20 takes, or if you're on a $100 million, $150 million movie, as a director, you can wait for the right sunsets, it's coming down this way, the right color and lens, etc. When you're in a low budget movie, if the sun is not in the right place when you're shooting it that first time, you move on. You don't have the same options.
Yeah, I always wonder what's going on when a director wants 30, 40, 50 takes, like Stanley Kubrick in A Clockwork, in that Shining movie with Scatman Crothers, where he had Scatman Crothers, and Scatman Crothers, I think, was in the 70s, and he had him fall down like 20, 30, 40 times in a row.
Right.
And Jack Nicholson finally said, I think we're done here. I think you have what you need. I always wonder, is it drugs? Are you detached from reality? What's causing you, or just is it a lack of preparation on the director's part? What's causing you to treat another human being like that? That's very weird to me.
A lot of directors don't even know what an actor is.
Yeah.
They know the camera, lights, they know the cables, they know editing, they know post-production, etc. But in terms of what an actor is as a human being and what their task is, there aren't a lot of directors who have taken acting classes or have relationships with actors at a professional level. I'll give you an example. When I first came into the industry, I was in this independent movie and with a relatively known director, and I was having trouble with the scene. So I went to him and said, hey man, this transition, is having difficulty with it, man. Can you help me? And he just put his head down, looked back at me and said, Bill, make it more blue.
Make it more what?
Blue.
Blue?
What does that mean?
More depressing, I would think.
I have no idea what it means to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, if you don't have the language to deal with an actor, it's hard for the actors. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you did a massive hit like XMen, does that dramatically affect your future career income and opportunities? Does your fee go up? Do you get more directors sending you scripts? Is there a direct relationship between one project and the next on that level?
It's inconsistent. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was coming up as a minority in this business, I didn't get the same kind of privileges totally that other actors got, but I got some. And I try to leverage those to my benefit. But all of us have to plan for the bad times, or for the difficult times, because you're on top today. But it's like, and also there's another thing, you asked a great question before. I have a metaphor for it that in terms of career stance, here's how I think it goes. 1, who is Bill Duke? 2, you got to get me Bill Duke. 3, find me a younger Bill Duke. 4, who's Bill Duke?
Yeah.
And not only for Bill Duke, but check it out with a lot of actors who have had great careers, right? But as they've gotten older, things have shrunk. You know what I'm saying?
That's not just in the acting profession anymore. Do you know that anesthesiologists who went to medical school and took on $250,000 in tuition debt are now finding that there's a new device, a robotic anesthesia machine, which is in the operating rooms, which is now replacing anesthesiologists.
Wow.
So ask yourself this, if they can replace anesthesiologists, who else can they replace?
Well, you know something? There's a movie, and if you get a chance to check it out on YouTube, it's only 15 minutes, but it is, in terms of your brilliant assessment, it talks about it eloquently. It's called Humans Need Not Apply. Humans Need Not Apply. You have to see that movie. It's like a little 15-minute thing. But the other thing is, are you aware of the fact that a year and a half or 2 ago that a robot wrote a script and directed it. Did you know that?
Mm-mm. How did it turn out?
It was horrible. And when he was told it was horrible, guess what his response was? I can understand, but it's just my first one.
Interesting.
I'm just saying to you, it's like it's interesting times in terms of robotics.
Yeah, until it affects you, then it's not so interesting. Then it's a nightmare.
That's right. It's a night.
But I was watching this thing on YouTube where they were comparing Alibaba, which is the Chinese counterpart to Amazon. It's a huge online company, and they were interviewing this guy who worked in the Alibaba factory, which processes and dispatches all the packages being sent out daily, just the way Amazon does in the United States. Only it's all robots. And the guy was so proud of the fact that he was working there, but yet behind him, it's just all robots. It was chilling.
If you go to your bank, say there are 9 teller windows. 10 years ago, there were all human beings there, right? Now you go in, there are 3 or 4 human beings, and the rest of the teller windows are robots. You take your card, you put it in, you can put cash in, take the cash out, you can check your account, or you can do it online, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same.
It's not the same. So you often play a detective or a criminal on the screen. Is that a conscious career path decision on your part? Or do you believe there's more money to be made playing bad guys on the screen than good guys? Or can you not make that correlation?
I can't make that correlation, but I mean, I like playing roles of good guys and so-called bad guys. But as I said before, one of my favorite shows on TV years ago, and I felt guilty watching it, was Dexter, because I'm rooting for a serial killer, but he's killing people worse than him. But they showed his family, his humanity, etc. And I thought it was brilliant because it showed the humanity of someone you judge this as a killer. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think that's brilliant filmmaking.
You did a really good gangster movie that doesn't get enough attention or compliments, and it was called Hoodlum with Larry Fishburne, and it holds up really, really well. How was that movie to work on?
It was incredible. I just found it to be something that, how can I say? It was a movie that, had a great script. We were able to get some wonderful actors. And we were in, I think, Chicago for months, working on it. But it was a great experience working with Lawrence and the great Cicely Tyson. One of my favorite moments in the movie is when they were driving to the opera and they got ambushed, and a lot of her people, Tunisian people, got killed. They never got to the opera, but the next scene is them sitting in her living room holding hands, listening to the opera in silence. It's one of my favorite moments in the movie. Cicely Tyson was incredible to work with.
Yeah, I'm always amazed by Clint Eastwood's acting and directing career. I also have observed the way he conducts himself in real life. He's not passing out in front of bars. He's not vomiting on planes. He's not dating strippers. So whenever I see integrity and strength of character, that's always a great start. But then when I hear about the way he directs movies and how he likes to do things in 1 or 2 takes and how he and his people always put in a lot of preparation, I thought, well, that makes sense. Then I saw in an interview where you talk about how you had prepared for a directing job that you had, where you prepared every scene ahead of time on paper. You know exactly what you wanted to shoot, how you wanted to shoot it. And the first thing I thought is, don't all directors behave that way? But then when you see how people conduct themselves, you realize, no, they don't. So is that work ethic, or does that philosophy of work, does it come from your meditation or your parental upbringing? Where does that strength of work ethic come from?
It comes from all of that, but also I come from the stage, and so we were very limited in budgets. And then I started in TV. In TV, you have 7 days of prep and 7 days of shoot. You do not get any luxuries of any kind. You have to come in on time and on budget. And so TV prepared me for 7 days to prep and 7 days to shoot. And my first feature film, I think it was The Killing Floor, we had 4 weeks to prep and 6 weeks to shoot. Are you kidding me? It was like a luxury compared to what I was used to.
That's interesting. You know, the pandemic shut down much of California and the industry for the last year. How did you spend your time? Could you relax a little bit, or were you working 7 days a week?
In terms of quarantine, it did 2 things. Self-reflection is one of the biggest things. You know, time to look in the mirror, time for self-examination, time for really checking yourself out and working on yourself as a human being. 2, a lot of the projects I had put to the side, I was able to work on and get them out there. I'll give you 3 of them. One is I have a channel, an online channel called Unite. That is, we put the first launch up with a page this past week. And what it is you turn the news on, what you see mostly is negativity. But there's a lot of positive things that are happening in this world that are never reported. What we do at Unite is to report those things, to bring people together. People with different opinions, etc., but we bring them together so that we leave a legacy for our children, that they're not successful in spite of what we've left them, but because what we left them. So that is up now. 2, a couple of books, 40 Years On Screen and Behind the Camera, can be gotten on Amazon. Also, my book of poetry, which is Invisible Man, Works of the Invisible Man. And then coming soon, The Journey, which is an animated book in a book. So I've been using that time to work on things that I haven't been able to work on because of my schedule when the quarantine was not there. But I've been very fortunate.
You know, you mentioned throughout your career that you like to meditate, and I have never meditated, but I am familiar with prayer. Is meditation similar to prayer, or is there a significant difference between the 2?
Prayer is very important, but meditation is a different reality. There are 3 types of meditation. One is concentration. You know, it's like they give you a profound thought and you think about it over and over and over again. Number 2, that's contemplation. Second is concentration. There's a candle in front of you. You look at that candle and that takes you to another place. Then there's mantra. A mantra is a sound that has no meaning, but has a certain vibrational effect on your mind, your body, focuses you, relieves stress, etc. And that's transcendental meditation. That's what I do, mantra meditation. It clears my mind, focuses me, enables me to do things creatively that I could not have done without it. I've been doing it for many, many years because, hate to admit it, but in my early years of this industry, as you know, it's a business of rejection. And people tell you just, to deal with it, forget it, but rejection becomes painful after a while. And so to kill the pain, I took drugs and alcohol. But then I found meditation through a friend of mine called Ayeda Tangamana, TM. And I haven't touched any drugs since that time. I started meditating.
So and I can delete this question if you don't want it to appear on screen, but I'm curious about the answer. Did the meditation give you the strength and the discipline to stop the addictive behavior? Or did you always have the strength and the discipline to stop it? and the meditation just somehow amplified it?
I had the strength, but the meditation amplified it. Because my parents raised my sister and I with great principles. But as you know, life can be painful at times. And sometimes you try to stick to those principles. Sometimes it's more difficult. But the meditation helped me get through all of that madness. That's why I'm here today.
So I have another theory. In engineering, there is a science in metallurgy called foraging. Foraging is where you take a piece of metal and you alter its properties. You can use heat or pressure to temper the metal, make it stronger, to make it bend to your will. And I think in human beings, when they're treated badly, for some people, that's like a forging process. It strengthens them. For other people, it breaks them. But for some people, it strengthens them. And I suspect the early rejection in acting strengthens you. And it somehow created within you the ability to project strength when you're on the screen.
Yes.
Very, very interesting. It's the things that we hate when, early on in life somehow forge us into the qualities that make us better later on. It's very, very interesting how, adversity affects people.
You have to believe in yourself,
Yeah. So I'm hearing from some of our sources that they're thinking of closing down Los Angeles County next month because more cases are being reported. If that happens, a lot of my celebrity friends are thinking about moving out of California. Do you plan to stay for a while, or are you also thinking about moving out as well if something like that happens?
Wow, that's a very painful question, man.
Well, we don't have to.
No. I want to answer it because it's a brilliant question. I'm thinking it through right now, man. It's like, I love Los Angeles. I love California.
Yeah.
I love the weather. I love the business. But now it's not only the shutdown, but if you go to Atlanta, there's more productions in Atlanta than there are in California. You know why? Tax incentives.
Yeah.
And more states around the country are doing tax incentives. I think it's in Georgia now. For every dollar you spend, you get 30 cents back or 35 cents back from the state. If you spend $10 million, can you imagine what that means in terms of your budget? So the thing is that Hollywood is not necessarily a geographical place anymore in terms of just Hollywood and LA, but wherever the business is, that's Hollywood.
Well, I think Tyler Perry's down there, and that may be one of the reasons that he is down there, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, have you ever been to a studio at all?
No.
You have to go at some point. 12 sound stages, state of the art. He has everything there. He built the White House for the show The Oval. He literally built the White House on his property, inside and out. I mean, he has an incredible staff. But boy, when the COVID hits, you're tested twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. You can't let anybody onto the lot. You can't go off the lot. So there's restrictions, but he has mastered it, and he really has. And the studio he has is state-of-the-art everything. It's really great.
I'm hearing from some producers I know that COVID has added 20% to the cost of producing some movies and television shows.
It's so, look, man, for independent films, I feel sorry for them, because if you don't have a COVID team protecting you, you could be sued and all that stuff. So, and I know that Mel Gibson, not Mel Gibson, but what's his name? That screamed at his crew.
Are you talking about Tom Cruise?
Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
They came down on him, but the thing is, they shouldn't have, because, it's his production. People were standing around the monitor with no masks on a set. They could have spread whatever they had, and they would have shut the whole production down. And he had stated before, you have to have your mask on. When we're filming now, whatever I'm doing, no one can take their masks off unless they're in the scene. And so the people in the scene take their masks off and do the scene. And when we say cut, they put their mask right back on again.
Brutal.
No one's allowed not to have a mask.
Yeah, that's brutal. You know what the first thing I thought of when I heard that tape of Tom Cruise yelling at those crew members? I thought, I'm wondering if these crew members are baiting him into doing something just so they can sue him. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Because everything he was saying was very reasonable.
That's right.
1,200 people on your payroll, and you're going to have the whole thing shut down because you guys are standing 6 inches apart.
That's right.
You know? So where's your focus these days? Is it primarily on television, motion pictures, alternative media? Where's your focus? Where are you focusing your energy and time?
Alternative media, because I'm looking at the future as best as I can. And I'm looking at the fact that there are shows that are online that are getting Academy Awards and Emmys. And before, used to get those from television shows and theaters. There's been a paradigm shift. And so, as Malcolm X once said, no matter how good a football player you are, if the name of the game is baseball, you better get yourself a bat. Because if you're running around home plate with a football in your hand, your competition is going to tell you how good a football player you are and keep running around the bases while they're playing baseball. Or another saying is, don't be playing checkers in the chess game. So I'm trying to keep up with the game, the new rules that are coming out, and also the opportunities that are there that weren't there when I first came along. There was no internet, man. Do you remember the first cell phone? Do you remember it?
Yeah, it was like a lunchbox.
Did you see remember how big it was?
Yeah.
You carried a box with it?
Yeah.
There was no internet. And now, like you look at Issa Rae, who has got shows on all kinds of networks and stuff, start off with webisodes. Always Sunny in Philadelphia, start off with webisodes. So people are not waiting to be discovered. They're discovering themselves. Does that make any sense?
Sure. That's the way to use your time. You can't just sit and wait. Waiting can be fatal.
Fatal.
So if somebody came to you with an unbelievable project, once in a lifetime project, would you, I don't know, do you also work as a producer or primarily as a director and actor?
Both, all three.
Okay. If somebody came at you with an incredible project, what's your first instinct? To take it to a studio, to do it yourself online? Where do you think the biggest dollars are at this point? If this is just a once in a lifetime project that you're reluctant to give too much of it away?
Well, the script is not enough. What the networks and studios really want to know is how you're going to make them their money back.
Yeah.
And what is the audience you're specifically after? What is their gender? What is their, is it rural or urban? Is it global? Whatever it is. Because if they're committing a certain number of dollars, how do they get those dollars back? So if it's a great script, it's one thing. But how are you going to make the money back for, the network or studio? And so a lot of people come with passion. I'm not trying to kill passion.
Right.
But the thing of the matter is, it's called show business. And when I first, like 10, 12 years ago, I was frustrated because I would take projects to the networks and studios. Like, oh, great idea. And I was passionate about it. We'll get back to you. I never heard from them. I went to my agent at the time and said, what's going on? They said they liked it, but they never got back to me. And he said, Bill, did you answer the essential question in the first 5 to 10 minutes of your pitch? And I said, what questions am I supposed to answer? He said, Bill, many of the executives are accountants. And what they want to know in the first few minutes, how in the hell you going to make me my money back? I said, wow. What happened to the creativity? He said, Bill, if someone asked you for $10 million, when you want to know the answer to the same question?
You know, you said something really interesting during a past interview where you talked about how studios and networks now factor in not just the looks of an actor or the acting ability of an actor, but how many social media followers they have.
Right.
I thought, oh, that's going to a very, very weird place. You know, a lot of people have no social media, and they may be the next Marilyn Monroe or the next Tom Cruise. It's very, very interesting.
Well, it's an interesting time. We're in a paradigm shift to a great extent, and I think that everybody's trying to keep up with it. But it's really. I'm trying my best. I have a good staff that I work with, younger than me, many of them, who really, know this roller coaster, this new roller coaster we're on. And so we have to really keep up, catch up, and try to stay ahead of the curve the best we can.
If an investor in our audience contacted you and asked you, what sort of project would you like to get funding for? What would you say?
Oh, I have several of them, I call them edutainment because I put entertainment in my projects to get the investor their money back because you have to entertain the audience. But I also put a little kind of, how can I say, little bites of things to think about and to feel so you capture the audience also, if that makes any sense. So I call them edutainment.
Well, before we go, is there anything else that you would like to promote?
Well, I think I told you about my network that's coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my books, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I just like to promote No Sudden Move because I think it's a great movie.
I saw it, by the way. I saw it. Once again, man, you stole the scenes. You stole them.
Thank you. I'm so glad.
You ought to be arrested for that. Yeah, you just take it all.
Thank you, man. I really enjoyed it so much working with Don and Matt Damon and others, man. It was a great moment. I think it's a great movie, and I think Steven should be celebrated because he's consistent. But I just enjoyed it.
You know what was funny? In a lot of your scenes, you were wearing a hat and some sunglasses, so half your face couldn't be seen, and you were still stealing the scenes. That is acting ability, my friend.
You know what's great about that? Silence is so powerful.
It is. I thought I was laughing throughout the whole thing because I'm aware of what's going on, but it was still fun to watch. So, Bill, it's been a real pleasure having you on the John Ark Show. I really enjoy it when a guest turns out to be intelligent and possess strength of character. And it's clear that you have all those qualities and more. Thank you for being so generous with your time. And you are always welcome back on the show, sir.
God bless you, my friend. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.